It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius. We're afraid of everything that might happen. Everything that might happen. We're afraid of losing our job, our partner, our friend's attention or affection. We're afraid of heights, falling, you name it. We're afraid of it. And yes, I know we're talking about fear, and the opening was a little daunting. So before we get into it, let's do tea. Let's get that pour going. Love that sound. That needs to steep. Hey there, guys. Welcome back. Warren here. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest. We fear everything that there is. And the thing about that is that just like anger, the problem with fear is that it's projected. It kicks in when no real predator or threat is there. And therein lies the problem, right? We're afraid of what might happen. Nothing that is immediate. And I get it. I get it. Like I said in the open, all of us are afraid of something. I mean, as they say, fear is real. But what I really want to get after is when fear turns into panic and leaves us panic stricken and anxious. I mean, no fear is as destructive, I don't think, as panic. I mean, all fears are baseless, really, based on what I just said about their projected. All fears are baseless, but panic, panic, panic is mindless. I mean, it gets to a point where adrenaline and no adrenaline kicks in and our palms get sweaty and we start to shake and our blood vessels are constricted and our blood pressure is raised, and we get to the point where, if not controlled, we start to fear itself. Yeah, and I'm going to explain that. I mean, we get to where we're so paralyzed. Like I said, our blood pressure skyrockets, and some of us act because fear has its purpose, right? There is a purpose for fear, both good and I'm not even sure I want to call it bad. It's just when it's not controlled, it can be detrimental to our health. But to that point, when not controlled, it can be detrimental to our health, right? Leading to anxiety disorders and even panic attacks. And I'll get into some examples of things I've seen where panic attacks and fear just freezes people into no action, right? But like I said in the opening, fear is projected into the future. And when we live in fear, clearly it's impossible to enjoy what we do have and the times that we can enjoy. And I know it's easier said than done. And like I said, I'm going to give you some examples, some real world examples, and then 4 pointers, I think, of how to get after it. And I'm staying clear of get over it because that takes work and time and practice. But I'll give you 4 pointers that I used with my cadets and soldiers to help them get over it. But I mean, as they say, the fear is real, like I talked about. And I don't want, I should have started with this disclaimer. I'm not saying that people who are fearful are any less capable of those that can overcome their fears faster or don't fear certain things, because that's another thing. is that I know people who fear falling in heights but are pilots. And I know people who are afraid of falling in heights that are not afraid of flying. So I get it. There's a fear for everything and we all fit into it. Mine is failure. All right. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And I'm also not naive to the fact that there won't be times when I'm not successful on my initial attempt or even the second or tertiary attempt. But just the fact that you can fail, right? Just like you think you can fall, it's there, and I get it, I get it. So, but we can get after it, and the first, just a quick backstory. When I was in the army in uniform, long time ago, I used to be the pre-air assault instructor for my unit, and what that means is I used to get the candidates ready before they went to the actual school so that, or in hopes that they would be first time goes in all of the challenges of the air assault school and the course. And one of the things we used to mimic, because we train as we fight, right? One of the things we used to do in the program was to mimic the course. And one of the things on the course is the confidence climb. It's about 30 to 35 feet straight vertical wooden wall where the rungs, especially in the middle, start to get a little wider as you get up to the top. And some kids would jump up on that wall after the instructions of all the proper 3 point of contact and being safe and slowing it down and all that good jazz. They'd still get up on that wall, and spider monkeys, I used to call them. And they would just scale the wall, no problems. And then, of course, on the opposite end of that, there would be those that would get, you guessed it, right about the middle. And then they would freeze, deathly freeze. And I would sit on the top and I would motivate them with speeches and questions and motivating things just to get them to get out of their heads. And the four things I want to share with you are four questions I used to ask them. And usually with these four questions, especially on the rappelling wall. So on the vertical wall, I use the same questions. The only thing about the vertical wall and the rappelling wall is that the equipment part of the series of questions was a little different, because on the vertical wall, the only thing breaking your fall, for lack of a better word, and not to be coy, is a padded bag at the bottom of the wall. At any given wall, that padding could be about 5 to 6 feet deep of padding. Sometimes not that much either. In other words, there's nothing holding you on the vertical wall except yourself. On the rappelling wall, clearly you have your Swiss seat, ropes, a belay person, the air assault instructor. So you have a series of controls that are not necessarily in your control. And I'm getting to a point with using control so loosely or so forcefully. And that is that one of the first questions that I would ask is, do you trust your team? And I get it. You might not necessarily have a team out there that is always available. You might have people you can depend on, and your situation might not be a rappel tower. But I would go out on a limb and say, just like I alluded to, You have people you can depend on. So based on the situation, you can seek help, right? So you're not alone. You don't have to take on that fear alone. So one of the first questions I would ask them is, do you trust your team? Right? Because clearly the belay person is an emergency brake, is what I used to call them. They're on the ground and they have a secondary rope that, should you panic or should you forget to brake with your brake hand and control your descent down the wall, as you've probably seen in the movies, in case they freeze and don't do that, the person on the ground can tighten up on their rope and save you from becoming what we used to call a dirt dart. And I don't mean to laugh. I just, it's kind of nostalgic just going back and thinking about things we used to say, right, to get people motivated. But one of the first things was, do you trust your team? And of course, as you can guess, the answer was usually yes, Air Assault Sergeant. And then, of course, I would follow that up with, do you trust your equipment? Right? And here's the unique thing about control now, is that with the Swiss seat, they had learned how to tie a Swiss seat by going through what we like to call in the military the crawl, walk, run phase, right? Where someone else talks you through how to do it by showing you how to do it. And then you get an opportunity to do it yourself over a period of time. And oh, by the way, it's being checked by a certified person who knows how to tie the seat properly, your air assault instructor, right? And then throughout the process too, you had your battle buddies checking you during the tying practice, right? So, do you trust your equipment? Clearly, you're in control of it. You're tying it, you're inspecting it. So, again, the answer is usually yes, Air Assault Sergeant. In your civilian context, that could be whatever equipment it is, right? If you're for the first time wanting to be a daredevil and go skydiving, right? You watched them pack the chutes, and you also probably helped pack your suit because some places like to teach you beforehand. The whole point is, whatever equipment you're working with, you've been working with over a period of time. And if it's new, there's someone there that can talk you through that process, right? Someone trustworthy, someone certified in whatever the thing is. There is help with someone that knows professionally how the thing should work, right? So the answer in your case too would be yes, I trust my equipment. And then the third question you need to ask yourself, that I used to ask the kids, is, do you trust the process? And what do I mean by, do you trust the process? Like I said, right? They had to tie their own Swiss seats. They had to ensure that their D rings on the Swiss seat was working properly, was facing the right direction. They had to go through the classes, touch it and feel it, like we used to say, and watching others go through it, watching others that you know are fearful of the same things you're fearful, go up on that tower and tap out and rappel successfully to the ground, and you see that smile on their face. You trust the process. If it's AA, you trust the process. If it's any kind of counseling program, any kind of educational program, any process that is going to help you grow and get over your fear or get through anything in life, you have to trust in that process. Usually, the answer to that question, too, is yes, Air Assault Sergeant. And of course, by now, you know what, or you've probably guessed what the fourth question usually is. or was. I would say is, because there's some people that I talk to that I share the same things with. And that question is, do you trust yourself? And that one is tough because the answer is almost always, as a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever gotten a no. The answer is always yes, Air Assault Sergeant. And then I'd follow that up with one question that doesn't meet the four in terms of the process, but it's the key question that after you exercise the four, you should be able to ask and answer. And that question I usually ask them is then, why are you still on the tower, Air Assault? If they answered all four and trusted their answers, 99.9% of the time, they go, or they end up scaling the rest of the wall. That one time, however, even after asking all of those questions and trying to get them out of their own way, some of them still freeze. That is the troublesome part of fear. You remember when I talked about fear being baseless, but panic being mindless? It can get to that, to where some people are so afraid, like I said, so fearful that they fear itself to the point of being frozen, panic. Then that takes more work, right? That takes more than just an air assault instructor with motivational things and good training techniques. It takes, yes, another professional, but that goes in the realm of counseling and a lot of other stuff. And there are some people that are just that. They're deathly afraid. They're wired that way. Their chemicals, they're no adrenaline, and adrenaline, when it kicks in, it kicks in, and it really kicks in. I once had a cadet that froze on climbing the free rope and just let go. As in, the brain just locked up in terms of, if you let go, you're going to fall and you're going to hurt yourself. Didn't register, just let go. Of course, luckily, they weren't seriously hurt, more so their feelings than anything else, but gladly. But I get it, it's real, but it is possible to overcome it. And oh, by the way, if you guys are still watching at this point, I appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around and giving me a listening ear. But yeah, if even with asking, do you trust your team? Do you trust the process? Do you trust your equipment? And more importantly, do you trust yourself? Then when you ask the question, and why aren't you pulling the trigger? And they don't know, that's when it's more like panic, anxiety to the point of inaction. And there might be more help needed there. But fear in and of itself is not to be feared. Okay. It is important. We need it. It is what happens neurologically and biologically when our signals say there is something that could cause us harm. Again, projected until it happens, but it's there to warn us, to give us that heads up that, hey, you need to be on guard. But I just wanted to share that fear is real, but it's overcomable. It is. It can be overcome. And with practice, obviously, with practice, the 4 pointers I shared aren't going to get you over that hump, I don't think, in a day or two. But just follow those. I recommend you follow those. Just ask yourself those 4 things every time you fear something, and honestly answer them, and take that leap of faith. Take that leap of faith and see what happens. Because I also said in the beginning that when it becomes to the point of anxiety and a disorder and panic attacks, it freezes us from inaction, and we will never be happy with where we are or where we could be. So, with practice and just again asking yourself these four questions, I think we can get after it. You can take a stab at it and maybe not be so fearful. And Marcus Aurelius reminded us that it's not death that a man should fear, but not beginning to live. And I know that sounds superficial and philosophical and easy to say, but just think about it like this, right? To get stronger, our strength has to grow from being tested, right? We have to be tested, battle hardened, and tested. So, with everything and anything that we go through in life, we can look at it as overcoming fear and facing these challenges head on with all our best intentions and all our best weapons that are given to us, be it via the universe or that we have acquired over a period of time. And I'm talking about weapons as in terms of resiliency, right? From all our challenges. But yes, strength grows through being tested, and being tested means action. All right. So get after it out there. And until our next conversation, you be good out there. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk again soon. We'll see you.